Hello, one and all, and welcome to a dice throwing episode of Top Deck Thoughts. Now, as many people know who already voted within my polls and such, I have a poll for the next topic of Top Deck Thoughts, and I'm kind of wanting to try to get Top Deck Thoughts out weekly, so I might actually start making these polls kind of like a frequent thing, essentially, like the start of every week. I give a few topics to talk about and such, and then give people the choice of what I want to talk, essentially what I'm going to be talking about. I feel like that would be a fun way to introduce kind of like community interaction and such, so expect that in the future. But as well as I stated before, they voted, and what they wanted me to do is actually make predictions for the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. A new Magic the Gathering set inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. Specifically, the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, kind of like semi-expansion and such. So, we're going to have our predictions, but first things first, I'm actually going to talk about a few hopes that I have for the upcoming set. First thing I hope for. I hope we get a very playable owlbear. Owlbears are kind of like my favorite little creature type within Dungeons and Dragons. They're cute. They're like cute, scary, but cute. I still remember having like a little owlbear plush that I actually got from one of my old game stores that I went to and such, and I had it for a little bit until I had to give it away to one of my students as a goodbye gift and such, but I do like the owlbear archetype. So I really hope that we get a fun, playable standard owlbear. That would make me have some fun shenanigans to do within the Brewing Labs if that's the case. Another thing I hope for from the set is I hope that we get a card reference, or at least a take on the famous, controversial item within Dungeons & Dragons, which is the Deck of Many Things. I really hope we get either a item card of some sort, or a specific, like, reference to it, or maybe even like a specific enchantment that is a take on the Deck of Many Things. I really hope we get that. That would actually be really cool to see, kind of like how the team at WotC essentially do their own take on that type of card. I'm very fascinated. Plus, we're playing in a card game, so having a card-based item reference to in a card game makes perfect sense. And the other thing I also hope for the set is I hope we get like a really cool new rare land cycle. I know a lot of people are hoping that the set can actually maybe complete a cycle that we haven't completed yet, like the many of them that we haven't completed yet. But honestly, I kind of think that for this set and all being their first kind of like crossover set to do like D&D flavored, essentially, cards, more or less, it's pretty much the closest thing in standard we're going to get to a Beyond Universes type set. I would really, 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 really like it if they try to do a unique new rare land cycle. I don't know what they're going to do, but I do think it would be kind of cool to have a new type of cycle, maybe a new type of special mechanics on the lands and such. It would be very cool to see if we can get like a really nifty new rare land cycle. That's what I personally hope for. And the last thing I hope for is, well, shenanigans. And I know a lot of people, when I said that on Twitter and such, kind of like jokingly said, but Modern already has shenanigans and such. And what I mean by shenanigans is mostly I just hope that while D&D has its moments where it can be very serious, D&D also is very, very lighthearted. Like, I really hope that within the set that we have a very lighthearted tone and have some fun shenanigans to be famous homages to themes that are serious, but also to themes that are really silly. Because, remember, this is the franchise where literally one of the most popular characters is a space hamster. Keep that in mind. So I really, really, really hope that we keep kind of like the lighthearted tone and just have some fun kind of like callbacks and maybe just some fun ways to essentially lighten up the mood. Like, essentially kind of like the positive tone we got from Strixhaven, lightheartedness of that, I hope it transfers into the D&D set, personally. Now that we got the hopes out of the way, let's actually get to some of my predictions that I have for the upcoming Adventure of the Forgotten Realms set. My first prediction. I feel like with the fact that we already seen that dragons are going to be in the set, I mean, it makes sense. We already seen Tiamat, as well as we've seen a reference to a popular dragon within a sorcery spell. However, we do need to get the dungeons portion of this. It makes sense because Dungeons and Dragons. And my prediction is I do think we're getting dungeons, but I think dungeons are actually going to be a new enchantment type. I think Dungeons is going to be kind of like a weird cross between kind of like world enchantments like they had in the past, as well as maybe a take on sagas. Maybe it's like a choose your own path sagas, because as many people who play D&D knows, when you go through a dungeon, you make a variety of choices and such to try to get to your final destination or final prize and such, and try to succeed or fail as such. It's kind of like a sense of choose what you do in the dungeon and such. So I feel like they're going to have their dungeon mechanic is going to be an enchantment based mechanic where it's kind of like a saga. Well, it's like a multiple choice saga. That's what I feel is going to happen with the dungeon mechanic. It'll be very interesting to see how they implement that. But yeah, I think the new enchantment type that we have seen teased by Mark Wohlsrott's blog, I think that's where we're going to get our dungeon mechanic, personally. So, dungeons and enchantments are going to be similar. My next prediction also for the upcoming set is I feel like we're going to, well, this one's kind of the no-brainer prediction since a lot of people have already guessed this, but as many people know, a popular theme in Dungeons & Dragons to essentially help play the game is to roll the dice. And I do feel like we're actually now going to have dice rolling mechanics within a Black Border Magic the Gathering set for the first time. It makes perfect sense. Like Dungeons & Dragons, you roll your dice, determine essentially what happens depending on your roll. I feel like we're going to get a subset of cards, or maybe even just like a few homage cards that basically make you roll a die and something happens. It's either going to be very essential to its point that it might be a new mechanic within the set that's dictated by dice rolls, or there's going to be a subset of cards within the set that is going to be dependent on when you roll dice, essentially. So yeah, that's pretty much an easy prediction. We're going to have dice rolling in the set. Another prediction that I have is, and this one is going to be a weird one to say, but due to the fact that this set is going to be a set that is kind of like the closest thing to standard that we're going to have to a Universe Beyond set, I think a lot of people have to prepare that this set is going to be very testing of the rules of Magic the Gathering in that sense. Like, for example, we already seen Loloth as a Planeswalker, and they already said within their like official blog posts and such that she's not really a Planeswalker within the lore-wise. They just wanted to test the mechanics of Loloth as a Planeswalker and such, just to have some mechanically unique card design for Loloth and such. And I feel like we're going to have to prepare for stuff like that. I think there's going to be some things that are going to be a little bit breaking some of the classic hidden rules of Magic the Gathering, to essentially have some more experimental and fun designs within this upcoming set. So, be prepared for some rules to be broken, is what I'm saying. So, it'll be kind of interesting to see which ones they break. Like, they already broke, like, the Planeswalker rule of Loloth and such. So, I'm really curious to see how far they go with testing that, personally. Another prediction that I have is, of course, D&D is known for a lot of famous characters and such. So, I think a lot of people need to prepare that we're going to see a lot, and I mean a lot of legendary characters in the set. Like, think Dominaria level is what I'm saying. So, I think we're all going to see a lot of legendary characters within the set, which is going to be fun for people who play Commander to have a bunch of new type of commanders that maybe they can brew around, especially if they're, like, upcoming into the Magic the Gathering from this set. Maybe they can make a commander based off their favorite D&D character within the lore and such. So, be prepared for that. We're going to see a lot, and I mean a lot, of legendary creatures. And my last prediction for the new upcoming D&D set, and this one is kind of the more crazier prediction. So, I think my craziest prediction is, I think we're going to get a sword from the sword cycle within this set. And I mean a new sword. I don't mean like, oh, we're going to make swords of Dungeons & Dragons Black Border legal. No. I think they're actually going to use this as a sneaky way to actually bring us one of the swords from the sword cycle that still needs to be completed into the set. Which kind of makes sense, because this is a set that seems to be has at least a semi-emphasis on equipment matter-based synergies. The fact that we've seen stuff like the Vorpal Sword, as well as we've seen essentially that legendary Bruner and such has an emphasis on equipment. So I think it's safe to say we're going to see some equipment in this set, and I can see them being very, very sneaky as an inside joke to be like, well, we can't bring the swords of Dungeons & Dragons into this, so let's actually bring one of the swords that need to be completed in the sword cycle into the set. make it D&D flavored. If needed, we can later down the line make a Magic the Gathering quote-unquote lore flavor in the card as a reprint in a future set and such. So I could see them being very, very sneaky and actually introducing a sword into the... essentially one of the swords from the sword cycle into this set. Now, I could also see many reasons for them not to do this, but I feel like that's going to be my coin flip prediction. If I get it right, cool. If not, I'm not surprised either. So, that is my predictions for the upcoming Adventures in the Forgotten Realm Magic the Gathering set. Personally, what do you think is going to be happening down with this set? Anything you're excited for? Anything you hope for from the set? Leave them down in the comments down below, and I hope you all have a lovely day. As they say, hip hip, hooray.